Hello, welcome back to TECHNOBABBLE. For the voiceover in this video, I'm going to review this controller, mostly just my first impressions on what I thought while getting to check it out. While the video itself is me taking the controller apart to clean it up because the RB bumper button had stopped working consistently. This controller was loaned to me, or at least that was my first impression. It turned out to be a case of sort of like, if you can fix it, you can keep it. So I want to say right away that I am not ungrateful for the gift, and the following thoughts are going to be completely unbiased, even though this was gifted to me by a friend. So let's get on with it, while I struggle to tear it down and clean it up to try and fix that faulty bumper button I just told you about. On this one, it's the RB button, like I said, that went out. These controllers are notorious for the bad bumpers, and taking this controller apart is pretty terrible. Anyway, for right now, let's go on with my thoughts about the controller itself. It's heavy, quite expensive, and the standard buttons and bumpers feel pretty standard. When attached, the paddles feel quite good and they fall into a good place for my hands, and it's nice that they are removable. The swappable joysticks are neat, and the tension can be adjusted with a little screwdriver if you remove the little magnetic thumbsticks. I don't personally like the weighty feel of the sticks, regardless of what setting they're on. The triggers have adjustments to allow for shorter pulls that may give you a slight increase in speeds in games like Call of Duty or Halo, but even on the shortest throw setting they have a bit of travel before they reach the activation point. So it might make it faster than a standard controller, but still not as fast as a wired controller. And I do have comparisons in my testing video. My thoughts about the controller itself are subjective, however, and any, all, or none of these factors could make a difference for you. It definitely has a different feel than the standard Xbox controller, and the customization options are fairly cool, among the best of all the controllers that I tested. And if you've watched my controller comparison video, then you'll know that the latency is pretty bad on this controller, at least across Bluetooth, and it didn't test any faster in a screen latency test on console. Actually, wirelessly, the Elite Series 2 tested as the slowest, even compared to the base model Xbox Series X controller. The polling rate and latency were almost doubled in that comparison. Accessories, like I said though, are by far the best of any of the high-end controllers I've gotten to test, as long as you're willing to actually get the complete version of the controller, because the core doesn't come with any paddles or sticks to swap to. And I don't personally understand why anyone would want to get an Elite Series core. To me, it would seem like if you're spending $130 on a controller, then paying that extra $50 probably isn't that big of a deal. I could never justify a near $200 or over $100 controller for myself. So that's what makes me super grateful to be able to test these like I got to. The Elite Series 2 is also incredibly difficult to disassemble, even worse if you don't want to scratch it up. And with as many cases of stick drift as you hear about in controllers in general, or again the notorious bumper buttons of the Elite controllers, maybe if you have a warranty it's not really going to be an issue, but if you want to try and repair the controller yourself, or if you got the controller second hand, it's definitely the worst of any controller I've ever personally disassembled. A lot of the parts aren't standard to other controllers, such as the magnetic thumbsticks. The base of those threads onto the joystick, and you are able to buy them on Amazon, but they are more expensive than standard joystick replacement kits. Not quite as pricey as those drop-in kits for the DualSense Edge though. Sony. Anyway, another repairability or disassembly issue is that the faceplate itself has those clips and is kind of tacked or glued onto the controller's frame. And don't even get me started on having to change out the battery pack, which is stuffed fully in the back of this controller. Not to even mention that buying replacement parts might become more difficult over time, as these controllers do sort of fall into a niche. And those sorts of things make this controller terrible for longevity. The Elite Series 2 does have some benefits over the other controllers I tested though, such as easy updates native Xbox support, and being recognized by the Xbox and on PC, making it easier and more in-depth to customize profiles and just tweak all the settings and anything you would like. The Elite Series 2 is not the fastest of the bunch, but it is incredibly cool and would make for a good conversation piece at the very least. But I don't think it's going to give you any massive benefits to gameplay with the remappable paddles or the fact that the triggers have different settings. And those are things that you'd really have to learn and grow accustomed to anyway if you're used to just using standard controllers and have been for a long time. There's muscle memory plays a big factor into it. And that's really it for this one. I think overall the Elite Series 2 is a really cool controller. Customization is pretty cool. The remappable paddles, the trigger locks and shorter throw, and like now you can apparently change the LED colors, and the overall customization of the controller is a very cool aspect. And if you're only concerned about the customization, then this is probably the best controller to look at. But if you are concerned about longevity or being able to repair it in the future and keeping this controller working for as long as you possibly can, then this controller is not good for you. Just like as far as my latency tests showed to me, it's not the fastest controller that you can get. So if you're only in it for being able to quote unquote play better, then this is definitely not a good controller for that. It's slow. Slow, heavy, expensive, and just cool. It's got a cool factor. Again, that's really it for this one. And I have to say, I'm incredibly glad I was able to test this and the other controllers that Swift loaned to me, because I could never justify the purchase for myself. And I'm incredibly grateful to have this controller as a gift. It's awesome. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, stick around for more controller and tech reviews. This has been Valhalla's Demise. Other channels and stuff always linked in the description. Remember to be safe and be good, and I hope to catch you in the next Technobabble.